What does it mean to be an open and affirming church? The youth at First Congregational Church in Glen Ellyn are discovering that for themselves. Their church is the first in their community to declare that lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people are openly welcome into the life and ministry of their congregation. For more, we welcome Rachel Barr, Director of Youth Ministry at First Congregational Church. We also welcome two members of First Church's youth group. Abby Weeks is a sophomore at Glenbard West High School, and Connor McDonough is a junior at Glenbard West High School. Tell us, Rachel, a little bit about the process that the church went through to become an open and affirming church.
So our congregation was really intentional about beginning conversations. It was about a 2-year process between when the conversations began and then when it went to congregational vote. And we had lay people as well as clergy involved in that process. We had them involved in conversations with young people. They came to youth groups. They came to all the different ministry teams of our church. And this was like a task force of folks, you know, who were really engaged in those conversations and trying to think about what does it mean for us actually to live this out in our congregation. And, you know, and part of the statement is really broad. It really tries to look at ways that we perhaps needed to grow beyond gay and lesbian and transgender, but also racially as well as economic diversity and marital status. So very broad categories.
What were some of the things that you did as the youth director or in partnership with other leaders of the church to engage the youth in rich conversation about the implications of this and kind of speaking kind of theologically about what that means for the church?
Sure. So we'd have a couple of different approaches. I mean, not only did we have conversations as ministry team members from the O&A committee came and talked to young people, but really inherent in our curriculum. One of the things that we explore in our 7th grade church school curriculum, and we talk about creation. And I was thinking about a particular lesson plan where we look at Christina Aguilera's video, Beautiful. And it really is trying to look at ways that God has created all people in that vast array of beauty. Through different folks, transgender folks who are struggling with anorexia, folks who are, living that out in multiple ways. So.
That's great. So did you guys go through that particular lesson plan, or are there things about the process that you remember in particular, either from youth group or kind of the broader church conversations? Maybe Connor, go ahead.
I just remember it was a very welcomed idea. You know, everyone was willing to discuss it. There was very little opposite. You know, everyone was willing to adopt this policy and thought it was a great move for our church.
That's great.
I remember being in 7th grade in pre-confirmation, and we watched the video, and everyone talking about it was like, oh, I thought it was like meaningful, because throughout the video it shows like a transgendered guy like getting into like an outfit of like a woman, and then it shows like a gay couple, and it shows like a bunch of different people, and maybe like a girl who's anorexic, and then it shows all these different people, and like it makes you appreciate like the quality of like everyone.
One of the things that I thought too, you guys might remember this, is during the process, our student leadership group of our senior high youth drafted like a statement of support for the open and affirming decision. And you know, they asked to be the first people to stand in support at our congregational annual meeting. And they had, you know, got together and decided what's the right language for this, how should we, you know, present this, and we asked everybody to come, like youth group members to come, and they sat together at the beginning, you know, of the service in the same rows, and then they stood up together and they read the statement, you know, to the congregation. So
that's great. So in a way, you ended up leading the congregation, at least in the kind of ritual practice of bringing it officially into the life of the church.
Yeah.
In your school context, what's sort of the general feeling about LGBTQ persons? Are there folks who feel free to come out, or what's the atmosphere?
I feel that our younger generations are more welcoming and open to this idea, and we may be one of the few and the first church to adopt this policy in our local area. But I feel that the community at school and in our town is a fairly welcoming one.
Well, we live in a really conservative community for the most part, and definitely like fiscally conservative community, and like even though our church is probably the most liberal out of like the ones in our community, and so it's a lot easier to be at church and like say that you accept like anyone because we're all like as a team agreeing on this. But it's a lot harder when you're like going to school and like there's other kids who maybe like make jokes and other stuff, and like you're not necessarily with like a bunch of people from your church when this happens. So then it's kind of like our priority and like our responsibility to like make sure that we're like still like living it out even when we're at school.
That reminds me, Abigail, of last year when the It Gets Better campaign was going on. We were talking about it a lot in school bullying, and there were a lot of teen suicides going on. And part of what I think as a youth group we were really engaged in conversation on is, what does it mean to be an ally? And like, how do you live that out? And in a way that your voice and your influence can have, power in the schools, and but at the same time, like not wanting to be also the recipient of any, sort of, derogatory statements. But sometimes it meant risking it. I think some folks have said that at Glenbard West, at least, there have sometimes been, situations where standing up for something has gotten them, some attention they didn't want.
Has there been feedback from kind of the broader public in response to this decision to become an open and affirming congregation? Our senior minister, the Reverend Dr. Lillian Daniel, she preached a sermon about being the unpopular church, right? And so this was on O&A Sunday. I'm thinking about this. And that was really language that she was intentional about, because, and I think that the difference between being unpopular and being not respected is two different things. I think that our church definitely has respect, and largely because of the work that has gone into our church and being a center in the community for change and for justice. The DuPage PADS, which is an agency that was created to respond to homelessness in the community, was created in the basement of our church. And so there's a way that we have gained the respect and are still working at that. Some people don't look at PADS as a very good decision for us to be a part of, but we keep fighting at it and keep working on it. And but I think that we're definitely looked at as a church that takes risks, but risks that are important. So. Well, thank you, Connor, Abby, and Rachel, so much for sharing about your own personal journeys with this process of becoming an open and affirming church, and for your participation in being a leader in Glen Ellyn. I'm Emily McGinley for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.